Okay, for those of you who are tuning in a little bit earlier, it appears that we are having some technical difficulties, so just to catch you up to speed, we did go into closed session. I just want to reread for the viewing public the items that were listed. It was number 1, parking authority contract negotiations, 2, public safety personnel, 3, a trustee vacancy, personnel, 4, website RFP responses, contract negotiations, and attorney-client privilege, and 5, redevelopment updates, contract negotiations, attorney-client privilege. We did adjourn the executive session, and the board intends to reconvene after the regular meeting has concluded. 4 announcements. Number 1, the Parking Authority will be holding a forum on Thursday, June 11th at 7 o'clock p.m. in the loft at SOPAC. The South Orange Village Center Alliance announces the return of the ever-popular South Orange Farmers Market. The market is open weekly on Wednesdays from 2 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. in the Sloan Street lot across from the New Jersey Transit Station. All of your favorite farmers are back at the market, in addition to some great new vendors. This market has everything you need to make your perfect 4-course meal. So be sure to visit the market every Wednesday through October. South by South Orange Festival is a 3-day festival of arts, ideas, music, and exploration. Friday, June 26th through Sunday, June 28th. Ticket sales starting June 15th at the SOPAC box office number 973-313-2787, or go online to www.southbysouthOrange.org for more information.
Sheena, just a clarification. Actually, sales are live right now. The pickup of the wristbands will be at SOPAC at June 15th, but absolutely sales are online right now at that website.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to open the public comments section of the meeting. Just a reminder for folks that there is 3 minutes per speaker, and Mr. Lerner has the timer up on the projector, and just a reminder to give your name and address.
Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen on the Board of Trustees. Last month when I came to the meeting, I addressed...
Just your name and address.
Oh, George Matias, 219 South Orange Avenue in South Orange. Last month I addressed the Board of Trustees and my concern for many streetlights that have been out in the village of South Orange. And I would love to take this opportunity to reflect thank you to the Board of Trustees that one in particular street light has been repaired and replaced in front of the Chris's Texas Wieners Diners. I would like to give a thumbs up to all of you because I know all of you have been instrumental in doing these things that I do bring up from time to time, and I would just say that we all, in cooperation with citizens and the Board of Trustees working together, we know we can do these things and get things done in our wonderful village of South Orange. And I also have learned from different friends of mine, etc., which is good information for myself as well. When these street lights are out or the poles are down and are not working, they are a hazard to the nighttime people that are walking in the community or driving, but also either way, public service is building the community, so I think that we should be extra diligent in making sure that we're getting our money's worth by not having a lot of dark spots in our communities. And I just wanted to say a sincere thank you all.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, George.
Good evening. I'm Mark Grady at 270 Lenox Avenue.
Mike.
Hi, sorry. Mark Grady at 270 Lenox Avenue. Just there we go. I just wanted to say thank you for the members of the Safety Committee who met with myself and some of my neighbors last Monday to consider the concerns at the Lenox Avenue and Ridgewood intersection. And thank you in particular for the very quick turnaround on the dangerous intersection signs. It's very much appreciated. Thank you all.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public that wish to be heard? Okay, seeing none, we have approval of the minutes.
Okay, approval of regular meeting minutes, March 9th and 23rd, 2015, April 7th, budget workshop minutes, and executive session minutes from April 7th, 13th, and 27th, 2015.
Can I have a motion?
I move.
Moved by Trustee Davis Ford,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Clark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and next we have an ordinance for first reading.
Okay, introduction and first reading of ordinance 2015-10, an ordinance amending in their entirety sections 138-5 through 138-10 of the Streets and Sidewalks chapter of the Township of South Orange Village Code to define the site triangle necessary at intersections which must be kept clear of plant life.
I'd like Trustee Clark to maybe give a little background, and I know
Yeah.
we got some
I
email
was-
correspondence.
I was actually going to move to pull this tonight because we did get some more feedback from some of the folks who attended the safety committee meeting. Unfortunately, I only got it this afternoon. I would really like to have legal review it. Our village engineer did take a look, and he thought there was some valid stuff and was worth doing. And I glanced at it as well and thought there'd be some valid stuff, but I really want to gut check it with legal before we, so I don't want to go through the process of a first reading, have to bring it back, rewritten, and then go through another first reading. But long story short, this is one we've been working on for a little while, and we did have a productive public safety meeting recently where we did kick it around a little bit, as well as larger issues regarding intersections in general. And so I'm looking forward to taking this back to the workshop and bringing it back better, and hopefully some safer intersections in the future.
Fantastic. Can I have a motion? You have to move to table it.
I will move to table it then.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Do we need roll call?
And now we have resolutions on consent agenda.
Okay, resolutions 2015-132 to resolutions 2015-140 are on the consent agenda. And we have one add-on resolution 2015-141 regarding the recycling tonnage agreement
Bless you.
that Mr. Machete asked me to put on as he's working on that grant.
Are there any questions or comments or discussion? Susan, has the one that was submitted from Public Works been posted to the website yet?
No.
Mr. Lewis, can you briefly go over this one for members of the public?
Sure.
2015-141.
2015-131. So we had gone out and solicited proposals for a website. Among that were certain requirements for a certain format.
Nope, wait a second.
Which one are we on?
The one that was the late edition,
Tonnage
20.
grant.
I'm sorry,
Tonnage
my
grant.
apologies.
grant.
I thought you were, oh, this is just a normal one. It authorizes the village to file an application for recycling tonnage grant for 2014. Every year, the village, based on tonnage of recycling collected not only by the village and the village's hauler, but also anyone doing work in town, they file reports with us, the grand total of all that tonnage by categories. We report that to the state, and then we are authorized to file an application for a grant. So this resolution simply authorizes the filing of that grant and designates our Public Works Director, and who's also our recycling coordinator, Mr. Machete, to file the application. Generally, this results in somewhere $25,000 to $30,000 a year in revenue to the village.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
I move consent agenda.
Motion by Trustee Schnall,
I second.
second by Trustee Rosner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, now moving on to the village president's report. So there's some interesting developments regarding the trustee vacancy, and I'm going to have to defer to village council to provide more of a legal update. So as you recall, we had our first meeting a couple weeks ago. It was the same night of the inauguration where we were being briefed on what the next steps will be for my seat that I vacated when I took my oath of office. Within our existing charter, what it says is that someone needs to be appointed by the second regular meeting, or the municipality has to have a special election at our cost, which can range roughly $25,000 to $30,000. So obviously, it's the intention of the board not to have a special election, but temporarily fill the vacancy until when it's required to be filled. Our charter currently says that it's the unexpired term, which for benefit of the public is the unexpired term of my seat, which would go from 2013 when I was elected trustee to 2017. It was a 4-year term. When we were in the Charter Review Committee, which occurred a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, our recommendations were to basically eliminate that provision in the village charter and defer to state statutes. State statute for filling vacancy is that a seat would be filled at the next municipal or general election, whichever one occurs sooner. In the instance of what's occurring right now, that would be the November general election. We had submitted the charter review recommendations quite a while ago, but through the Office of Legislative Services, OLS, they had some things that they wanted changed, updated. It hasn't moved through the legislative process quite as quickly as we had hoped. So right now we're in the middle of working with our legal counsel and also working with the state to figure out what we're required to do. Again, our charter is an act of the legislature. So to say that we're not going to follow it, we found something else that we like a little bit more could open us up legally, and that's what we're just trying to work through moving forward. It is the intention of the Board of Trustees to appoint someone to fill the vacated seat. Right now, the intention is in the immediate term, so we don't have to call for a special election. And then we will have an update at the next board meeting with advice from the legal counsel as to which direction we move in regarding whether it is through the next general election or if it needs to be required to be through the unexpired term, which would go all the way through May 2017. Are there any questions or comments from trustee members? Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Rother?
No. What you've stated is absolutely correct, that pursuant to Article 2, Section 2.4A, that it would be for the unexpired term. However, we now have agreement with OLS on the form of the documents that they want adopted, and we can have those here for approval at the next meeting, and perhaps we can get the charter amended quickly enough so that your intention can be fulfilled.
So in the event that the legislature is able to authorize our charter changes before November, we
Yes.
can still have the November election?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Any questions for our legal counsel? Okay. The next item that I have under my village president's report is RFPs for professional services. As you recall, we have I'm not really sure why it's called a pay-to-play ordinance, but it covers a lot more than pay-to-play. It also covers professional service contracts, and it was the intention of the Board of Trustees that it would be healthy to have an RFP for all of our professional services at least once every 3 years, just healthy competition. And so we want to make sure that we got onto a regular schedule of making sure that we rotate professionals within our organization that we put out for RFP. Again, all of the existing ones are welcome to reapply, but every year we're going to have a new set of RFPs that we put out and seek responses to. For this year, we are looking at doing bond counsel, planner, public defender, and risk manager. Are there any questions from my colleagues on the board regarding that? Okay. And then the other update was regarding 298 Walton Avenue, the former JAC building. We have been receiving a few questions about the status of the RFP, and we're all kind of just diving in right now because we're doing some capital budget planning, facilities planning, and so I'd refer this one to Mr. Lerner to give an update, a brief update, and what direction you need from the Board of Trustees so we can make it clear to the public what the intentions are.
Currently, well, just to give you an update of what we've done since the closing of the JAC, there were some maintenance issues that we had to take care of. We've gone through a number of maintenance issues that we've done. We've assessed and spoken to a few people regarding that building. Now, what I guess the direction from the board, what I'll be looking for is what that use of that building is going to be, whether we want to move forward and use it as a shelter, or do we want to look at other options, as we heard from our Fairfield Neighborhood Committee. So going, I guess, forward that way would be the best direction.
Do Trustee Levison or Trustee Clark have some recommendations to offer the Board of Trustees at this point, or are you continuing to meet with some of the stakeholders?
Well, yeah, we have met with stakeholders, but not in a formalized way. Basically, people have been coming up to us on the street or wherever they can grab us. The Public Works Department has not sat down as a committee and officially discussed a direction for it. Other than anecdotal information on what the town needs, I feel like that's all there is. We don't have any sense of frankly, statistical analysis of what the reliable population of animals is that would need to be controlled versus any other burning need within the community, other than again, anecdotal. So if that exists somewhere, I would like to see it.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah. We've as well had informal conversations with the neighborhood association. My personal feeling is that, and we've talked about it previously, of combining the various RFPs into one RFP for the usage of that site. I as well have had a conversation with the vice mayor of Maplewood, and they're interested in understanding how we're proceeding, because they are right now having a problem with their sheltering proposal.
I do think we're getting to that point where things are the timing, because we know that we have a neighbor that's in need, that is hoping that we will take on a certain role for ACO, sheltering needs, et cetera. Do you think that perhaps we can call a meeting together with all the stakeholders pretty soon, if not next week, reach out to some of the folks who would like to see it remain a shelter, reach out to the folks who have been advocating alternative uses from the Neighborhood Association, and then from Mr. Lerner, if you can get all the information from our Department of Health and our ACO on the number of animals, all the data, statistics, it would be good to reach out to Maplewood too, since they are hoping that we can take the lead in some form to understand what their needs are. Because there's a few different hybrid models I think we can go in, but without the actual numbers, discussing the needs of a shelter or a municipal pound, or maybe a partnership between a municipal pound and a nonprofit, or a totally different adaptive reuse. But we do need to post an RFP.
One other comment, and I think we need to be seriously talking to the county about their role in providing shelter for the county.
I did have a meeting with the county executive a couple weeks ago, and I did raise this issue, but from my understanding, the county is not currently looking at providing these services for municipalities. And we do have a representative here. He doesn't have to comment, but at least that was the position of the county executive right now.
Two points to that. One is, the first is whether the county recognizes that it is something that they should be providing, and I don't think we should just accept no as first response. I think there's 20-odd towns in the county, and many of the towns have the same need. And it seems like a perfect opportunity for a shared service with more than one town, because none of the towns by themselves have enough of a need for a shelter on their own. We partnered with Maplewood, and my second question is, what is Maplewood's role, and what is our obligation to Maplewood if we decide to go for an adaptive reuse of that property? What exactly do we have to return to Maplewood, if anything? Or do we have to partner with them?
Yeah, we don't have a definitive answer on that. As you know, Maplewood was a partner with us with the JAC when that building was built, and they contributed financially to it. It is not the most artfully worded document, but we're working with council to review what our respective obligations if we were to repurpose the building.
Can we talk offline then, and we can announce, and I'm happy to work with both Trustee Clark and Trustee Levison, is that in the next 2 weeks we will call a meeting, we'll bring everybody together, we'll get some data statistics, we'll have a meeting, let everybody push for what they, hope the new use will be, and then hopefully at the next meeting have very clear direction on what type of RFP we'd like to put out.
Yeah, I think, frankly, in terms of getting a decent RFP back, the more specific it is, the better. I think a very vague, open-ended RFP is not going to be as attractive for response, and I also don't think it necessarily is informed by any real need in the village, and that's what we should be driving this by.
And in a conversation that I had with our administrator, Barry, can you just go over to, in an RFP, if we're not very specific about the services, it turns into the lowest bidder?
Yeah, there's a distinction between if we are to use it in connection with a service that we're having, i.e. animal control that's connected with a municipal service, then we can enter into an agreement with an entity to run it, operate it, to provide that service to us. If we're simply going to lease the building to any number of private entities, then, and certainly Mr. Rother can weigh in as well, then we fall under the local public lands and buildings law that mandates that you go out to essentially competitive bid and take the best, highest rent that people bid you, with your only control being enumerating very specifically what the permitted uses would be. So to your point, if we're going to go that route, it will be critical to have some understanding of what would be acceptable uses in there and make sure that that's all clearly spelled out in the bidding document.
So we need to know pretty decisively what we want to be there before we post any RFP.
Correct.
Okay.
And just one other suggestion is that if Adam can contact Maplewood and get their statistics.
It would also be good if the administration can follow up on checking with other municipalities relatively in close distance to us to see if any of them currently demand some of these services or will be shortly, whether it's an ACO or if it's shelter or municipal pound, what the needs are out there so we can start approaching. If it turns into that we will be offering those services here, we need to, our numbers alone from at least what I've seen and what I've been told would not suggest that we need our own dedicated municipal pound or a shelter. If we are able to attract other towns relatively close to us, it actually may kind of work out. So the more data that we can get from the surrounding communities, and that's basically what the county had communicated too, is nothing stops us if it's not the county providing the service, that we can enter into interlocal shared services with a bunch of different
So
folks.
to go a little bit further, you would ask every single town in the county then? Other
Well,
than maybe
some
Newark.
of them run very robust because their needs suggest that they need that type of
But
facility
maybe
within
they
their
need
own
to
city.
buy the service from them if they have a robust.
Right.
And that's another option as well.
Right,
That's a good
and
point.
we are exploring the options with, and obviously there has to be a certain degree of geographic proximity because you can't go too far, but we're exploring both in terms of whether there are others similarly situated with us that don't have enough need of their own that maybe we could combine with, or if some of the others that have operations, whether they'll contract and take our,
Correct.
And provide the service to us.
Okay, so why don't we, by this week, we'll have posted on the website when meeting date will be set to discuss 298 Walton Avenue. Everybody okay with that? Great, and my last point was Office of Emergency Management appointments. So the village president, let me walk you through this. The village president names the people to the OEM team in South Orange. The previous village president named himself the OEM coordinator. The OEM coordinator actually needs to be a resident of South Orange. We discussed this in our Public Safety Committee, and what we'd really like to do is to allow our deputy village administrator, who's gone through extensive training, to be the official OEM coordinator, but because he does not live in town, I cannot authorize that as village president. So in conjunction with the police department, the fire department, and the other members of our public safety committee, it was decided that I would name myself the OEM coordinator, but put the responsibilities of all the OEM logistics to Mr. Lerner in his existing role as deputy OEM coordinator. My role as village president will be that of public information and getting information out to the community and the public and not handling any of the logistics. There is currently state legislation, I believe, that is trying to be more flexible about who the OEM coordinator can be in the municipality. Obviously, our police chief is taking care of our police department. Our fire chief is taking care of the fire department. Everybody within our OEM team has specific roles and responsibilities right now, and Mr. Lerner has done an incredible job. He kind of took the lead in the last massive snowstorm where it was a state of emergency and provided great logistics to all the departments, keeping the trustees informed, and so I think he will be very wonderful in this new role. So with the support of the Public Safety Committee, it is my appointment, but I do want to put it to the trustees if there's any concerns about that, if you like the direction, and if so, I will put this as a village president appointment, but make it very clear that Adam will be serving in this role as the coordinator. I will just have it in name. Okay, great. So we will have that added to the agenda, Ms. Caljean, for the next regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. The village administrators report.
Okay, got a couple of updates. I'm sure a number of them people have been waiting anxiously to hear. You'll recall at the last meeting we awarded a contract for curbing replacement on certain streets under the Morris County Co-op to D&L. We anticipate a pre-construction meeting with them this week, and then anticipate that project to start within the next week or two. That would be replacing the curbing on Crestwood, Mountain, Northwoods, and Great Hills up in the North Newstead area. As you're all aware, those roads were in poor condition to begin with and really took a beating over the winter. We just tonight approved the sort of follow-up resolutions on that, which is to do the roadway resurfacing and paving, which involves milling down the existing surface and then resurfacing with new pavement on all those roads up in North Newstead, and that contract will also include Bowes Avenue from Raymond to Stewart, or the village line, as well as on North Ridgewood from South Orange Avenue to Redmond. Those two roads did not need the curbing, so all those roads will be paved. The paving should occur. The curbing, assuming it starts in the next week or two, would probably be, give or take a month. So then we would anticipate scheduling the paving shortly thereafter. Also want to give an update and make sure that anyone who's listening is aware that these are projects that are suitable for utilizing the co-op, which involves milling and overlaying and some of the other things. There are still a number of other road projects that we have not forgotten and are still in the queue and in the works and under design, which for a number of reasons are not suitable to use the co-op. The first is Terrell, which involves some reconstruction and has a NJDOT grant, so that has to be done separately and separately bid. We anticipate going out to bid for that road fairly shortly. Toulouse, which also needs a reconstruction, so it's beyond the condition of it, but that's also will be this year. Blanchard and Crest involves some reconstruction of retaining walls and some other complexities that are beyond just having the milling and overlaying under the count. And then Hartford, because it's in the Montrose Historic District, it involves state historic reviews. So those projects are still in the queue, depending on when the various approvals come in and stuff. But I just want to make sure anyone on those roads don't think we've forgotten about them. So next item is some redevelopment updates. The Gateway is now really up and running, and I think a number of people attended the sort of grand opening, and Mara's is now open. D&I is coming in, and the Y Gallery, I understand, has pulled their permit, so that's exciting. Third and Valley continues to move along on schedule. Had correspondence with Mr. Woody from Jonathan Rose today, and he confirmed that they are still anticipating and looking at hopefully having the first tenants move in December 1st. So they're doing a great job over there. We have continued to meet with a number of stakeholders regarding the Orange Lawn property. There is a contract purchaser who we have met with a number of times, also met with representatives of the Orange Lawn Tennis Club, and also met with representatives of the neighborhood as that possible development continues to evolve. That's a project with it being in, because of the townwide rehabilitation, we have the opportunity to do a conditional designation of redeveloper and approve in concept at least via redevelopment plan, which gives us a significantly greater degree of control. So that will be a recommendation to appoint the contract purchaser with the consent of the Orange Lawn Club and conditionally designate them so we could commence negotiating to see if a plan can be crafted that is suitable and strikes the appropriate balance both with the neighborhood, with the club, and with the village. So we would look to recommend to have that on for the next meeting. We've also, and I think a number of you are aware of from some of the correspondence, we've had communication from a developer who is a contract purchaser of a number of properties on 4th Street, just south of the Third and Valley development. When you go down Valley, if you turn right down 4th Street, there's a number of on the corner. There's a motor vehicle type repair business, and then going down there are a number of houses. They used to be houses; they're now converted over into sort of contractor type businesses and trades. And this property owner has expressed an interest in also pursuing some development there. So that's another one that we would look to. The first step, of course, is the conditional designation of a contract purchaser, which does two things. It sort of formally and legally allows us to begin the formal discussions of a possible redevelopment plan to authorize some development, and equally importantly, it allows us to collect from them an escrow deposit by which they then pay our professionals to review their proposals rather than having us pay for it. A couple others that are not that far along in the process, but just to give an update, the Church Street property, I think most people were very glad to see those buildings demolished, and there is now the parking lot there that is being used currently by commuters, and there's some reserved shopping spots, and then once the deck opens, we anticipate that being available. Under the lease that we had, we have an 18-month period. We continue to work with the owner of that corner property in trying to work with New Jersey Transit to see if there's an opportunity for a larger redevelopment type project there that could provide some additional parking and some other things. A little early in the process right now in terms of any designation there. And then also on Irvington Avenue, everyone is well aware that there is a contract purchaser of properties over there. We continue to meet with that prospective developer over the size and scale and trying to address neighborhood concerns. The developer to date has been very cooperative in trying to revise and in many instances scale back the plans. As the process unfolds, we will undoubtedly, if it gets to a point that it seems like there's been enough movement, that we may kind of revisit with the neighbors. And again, that one's, I think, a little premature in the process to do any designation until we see whether there seems to be something viable, but wanted to give an update on that. On the budget, as I think you were all aware, obviously, because of our election and our form of government, we could not, unless we had introduced and adopted and completed our entire budget process before the election, we couldn't start the process because it all has to be done by one governing body, and there was at least the potential that we wouldn't have the same one, although with running unopposed, we will have a new trustee filling a vacancy. So we had, and in addition, the originally proposed budget did include, and as you're all aware under the charter, it is the village president's budget. So the original proposed budget presented did contain certain items. I mean, the vast, overwhelming majority of our expenses and our budgeted items are things that are pretty well set in stone in terms of, certain employment and staffing and debt and things of that nature. But there are some items that are, if you will, the village president's initiatives. So I'm reviewing those with the newly elected village president, and we're going to be meeting this Thursday, hopefully to kind of put to rest all the sort of other items that, what the prior village president's priorities were and initiatives in there and what the new village president would like. And we would expect to then have a kind of a revised version of the budget presented to you by the next meeting with the hope then the Finance Committee would review it and look to introduce it certainly no later than the first meeting in July. Lastly, we were approached by our recycling coordinator, and they, as you're all aware, we currently have recycling pickup on Wednesdays. As I think you're all aware and many residents are aware, the current schedule, we are later in the day, and frequently, whether it's weather or they get behind or they have a truck breakdown, it's not uncommon that we don't get finished or that people get picked up very late. When we expressed those concerns to the hauler, they were fairly candid and told us the way their things have broken currently. They had 7 towns on Wednesdays and only 3 on Thursdays, and geographically, that they basically suggested if we were open to an opportunity to switch hours to Thursdays, we could get significantly better service, earlier service, and basically get the whole town done in the mornings, and even if they were running late for any reason, it would still be completed in a single day. Having reviewed it with representatives of the Public Works Committee, with Mr. Machete, our DPW director, our recommendation is to move to that. Again, it would remain the same weeks. It would just go one day later onto a Thursday. This wouldn't be implemented until July, so we would certainly take advantage of the opportunity to make sure and notify and put new schedules out and on the website and disseminate it as greatly as we can. We'll put it in the gaslight as well. The contractor has agreed to absorb any costs associated with notifying the public of the change in date. But we think that it's worth it. It's become sort of a chronic problem with these late collections. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll finish. That we think it's better, and they have given us the assurance that we will be, again, one of the first in the morning towns. So, again, more formal announcement and schedule will be posted. But wanted to get that out there, and that was all I had.
Are there any questions for the administrator?
I just one question I didn't catch. Did you talk about North Ridgewood and Vos?
Yeah, when I was mentioning on the paving, in addition, once the curbing's done up on the Newstead roads, then when Tilcon comes in under the county co-op, again, it would be North Ridgewood from South Orange to Redmond and Vos Avenue from Raymond to the town line heading north.
And do we have any update on Scotland? I know it's a county road. Have we heard anything new from the county in terms of when we might expect to see any of those roads repaired?
I have not. I don't know if Mr. Frank's still here. Or? No.
You knew what I was going to ask.
Frank heard that one coming and he's gone.
I have not, but I can certainly follow up with our engineer and with the county engineer.
I do know that there are plans in the works for Wyoming Road to be repaired. We're still waiting for the time frame on that, but that's going to be a little bit more elaborate. So they haven't given us specific details yet, but they obviously need to coordinate with police and with us to once they have dates in mind.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Let's move on to trustee reports. As a reminder to the public to try and balance action items with reports for both our meetings, regular board meetings. We have half the trustee reports in one meeting and the other half in our second meeting, and so we're rotating those out. Tonight we have Trustee Davis-Ford, Trustee Levison, and Trustee Schnall. Let's start with Trustee Davis-Ford.
The first item I want to give an update is about an employee wellness program that the Legal and Personnel Committee has been working on to implement. It is my understanding that we're finally going to roll this out, and it's going to be a lunch and learn program. And these are a series of developed programs that are available. Is that better? Can you hear me now? Okay. We're about to roll out an employee wellness program in partnership with St. Barnabas or Barnabas Health System. These are custom programs that can be customized to a particular organization or population based on their needs and their interest. And it's a really varied and quite extensive selection of wellness programs. This is to educate our employees about issues and things regarding having better health, and it does a lot of things. It shows an investment in our employees, and if we have healthy employees, they're available to serve our residents, and also it also reduces the cost of health care coverage for those people who may be out do the things that happens to all of us from time to time. It will happen every month on the third Wednesday, and it will be a lunch and learn program. So during the lunch hour, they will have lunch while the presentation on any particular wellness initiative that has been selected at that time. And so the first one will happen this month on I guess that's the 17th of June. An update on the recodification. I think the President touched on it a little bit about the process that we've gone through for the recodification that she was a part of, and it was sent back to us from Trenton to look at some changes that they suggested. And I'm going to ask our legal counsel to weigh in and give us a more detailed update about where we are with that process.
I think we're talking about two different things. The charter review and the recodification. The charter review has been returned to us for some revisions that they would like to make. On the recodification, we're having a meeting with General Code to move that process along. Hopefully we're close to the end on that one.
What do you need in terms of any administrative things from us, from the Board of Trustees? Are there remaining items?
On the recodification?
Yes.
You will get a document essentially outlining all of the revisions, because what's going to happen is by ordinance you're going to reenact the entire code all over again with all of the revisions. I should point out that there is a change to the way that the ordinances are displayed, which is going to be the primary change, because individual changes to ordinances are ongoing. I've had some discussion recently by email with Trustee Levison, for instance, about changes to the water ordinances, which are long overdue, which weren't addressed there. So there are going to be a number of sections of the code, even after the recodification is done, that are going to be continued to be addressed.
Well, I think it's important that a number of our ordinances or our code is way behind, and we should be reviewing each one individually to bring it up to current state. Like the water hasn't been updated for a long time.
Yep.
Because the recodification is only bringing together all of the ordinances that we had passed previously and put the logicals in it.
The recodification addresses ordinances that are outdated legally and have a number of other technical problems, and of course restructures the way the code is presented. But when you're talking about taking major sections of the code, like water, sewer, any of the other areas that haven't been addressed soup to nuts, and I mean, that's a huge project, that will be ongoing work.
Like we did with the burglar law.
Chapter by chapter.
What do you anticipate is the timeline for the final?
It's never done. It's a work in progress. It's process.
It's always.
It goes on forever, really.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this particular.
Yes.
I would say we're going to have this together by the early fall.
Okay. Because we're doing that business code review right now,
Yep.
and so I'd like to make sure that we get in on this cycle
Yep.
so we don't start PDFing ordinances.
See, that's exactly what Trustee Levison and I have been talking about, that there are sections exactly as you just pointed out, and we haven't addressed all of those. I mean, they're ongoing. You're going to be taking chapters out of the code and looking at it, over the course of years. It's an ongoing process.
It's an organic document.
Okay, I'm sorry, Trustee Davis Ford, do you want to continue?
Yes. We had entertained an organization that was advocating for municipalities to pass some legislation allowing for companies that do business in a municipality to offer sick pay to their employees. And so we're going to now revisit this and have a real robust discussion at our next meeting. And our thinking is that we're probably going to hold some outreach to the stakeholders for residents and business owners, and have a discussion about whether or not this is something we as a legislative body would want to do. And there are two ways to approach this if it is something that we decide to move forward on. And one is just to go ahead and pass the legislation. And the other way is the way Montclair, which is similar in I guess the makeup of our town, except larger. And what they did was they put it on on the ballot for the residents to make that decision. And in that instance, the residents decided to support this requirement that businesses, based on a number of hours in individual work, to afford those employees sick pay based on earned worked hours. So that will be on our agenda for our next meeting to vet and discuss and decide what actions we're going to take and how we go about it moving forward. And finally, one of the things that we've done in the last several years quite well, again, valuing our employees, which also will allow our residents to benefit from better customer services, is professional development. And we're looking at what type of professional development that we'll give in the fall. We've done things from customer service to conflict resolution, to a new, looking at maybe some training on software skills. So those are the types of things that we've done in the past, and we're looking to see what would be something of value to invest in our employees regarding their professional development so that they can perform at the highest level that we would expect, and also to better serve our residents. So that's all I have for today.
Are there any questions for Trustee Davis Ford? Okay, Trustee Levison?
Yeah, I have just a few items. One, we've been notified by the county that we're up for another reval. We're planning on possibly starting that reval next year. We're looking into possibly doing it together with Maplewood. I've had some conversations and Barry has had conversations with the administrator in Maplewood. If we could do it together, that brings us in sync for having the same period of evaluation for both municipalities, and it reflects back into the school district.
I have a question on it.
Sure.
So the benefit to doing the reval at the same time as Maplewood is more parity in the
Correct.
assessment of our school board taxes?
It takes that equalization
Yeah.
factor off the table, which
Right.
is often, which is fair as it tries to be, it often is not fair or accurate. So in
Okay.
certain marketplaces, in certain markets, especially a down market, it becomes becomes less accurate for as far as purposes that we're concerned. The question I would have more about the revaluation is that I was under the impression that we could go 10 years past when we had a reassessment done, even though the revaluation was was done in '07. They then did an assessment in '11. So I'm not quite sure why they're coming back to us so soon. If it's supposed to be every 10 years, so I guess they figure it's going to take 2 years before you do it. And I think Maplewood did theirs more recently.
Correct.
So if we're going to coordinate, it might mean, and I know that the average town in the state takes well over 10 years. So, and the last time I think we went 19 years or something. And there's never a perfect time, but I think that we should have a lot of flexibility in the timing of this to make sure it works with Maplewood, so that we can do away with that equalization factor. even if it
When
means
did
coordinating.
Maplewood do theirs last?
I think they had a reassessment 3 years ago.
Yeah, they did it a year or two after us, both
Right.
things.
Well, then they probably did a reval close to when we did, no?
Yeah, they did it a year or two after us,
Yes.
just like the reassessment.
So we're pretty close in schedule then.
Yeah, but I mean,
relatively.
we have flexibility that we should be able to wait a couple of years without a problem if Maplewood wants to wait, which is my understanding that they do.
Well, what was expressed by the tax assessor was that there are a number of other municipalities who want to do it at the same time, and the number of companies that do the reval
Right.
will be all at the same time, and it's better for us to do it sooner than later. We should be planning on looking at that for something that starts for next year.
What is the legal requirement, the actual legal requirement?
Theoretically, 10 years.
10 years from the last
Well,
reval?
it's really driven by the equalization ratio and how far your
Right.
sales prices come off of 100% of true value. And that's the problem, is the volatility in the market. And ironically, we did the reval just before the market dropped. The market dropped, we did a reassessment. Now the market's coming back, and our values currently are, the actual values are going to come back, unfortunately, probably very close to what the reval was that we changed from the reassessment. So it's, as a rule of thumb, you generally hope to get 10 years, but legally they can compel you to do it if your equalization ratio falls below a certain percentage of what they determine to be.
Historically, they've been fairly lenient in that.
Yeah, you generally can sort of negotiate with them to get a couple of years, and particularly, it's particularly difficult because the funding of these, generally you can do them as a sort of a special emergency authorization and spread it over 5 years, but we just only a couple of years ago paid off the reval, and I think this year we're just paying off the reassessment. So then you start all over again, and revals are more expensive than reassessments.
What is the estimate for the reval cost?
300 to 500,000.
Yeah, I would say probably 500. I think the reassessment was 250.
Yeah.
The reval is more detailed than that. The reassessments are more sort of global adjustments and things, where the reval involves actually they go and essentially appraise every single property and take pictures, and I would say 5 or 6 would be my guess.
And there is an additional cost to the town in that you have to set up meetings, there's more time for the tax assessor. There's definitely a drain on services, and you just have to be careful, and you don't want to, every time you speed up the process today,
and inevitably
then
leads
10,
to more,
12 years,
also inevitably leads to more tax bills, whether they're right or wrong. It just leads to more tax bills.
Okay.
And there's rules around when you can do the tax appeal after a reval.
Right.
All right.
The other item is that we're looking to do a bond issue very shortly. What has happened is that we have a number of unfunded capital ordinances, and what we've been doing is funding our projects from monies that we had gotten from a previous bond issue, which we didn't, which was for Village Hall, and the money was in the bank, so rather than going out and funding it, we used that money for the projects as we were going along. We're now at a point where we have unfunded capital ordinances which we need to go out and fund. The other is that what we're trying to do is project what the interest rates are going to be if the market is going to start to move up, and should we borrow slightly more than what instead of going out for bonds, that we bond for some of the unfunded capital items now in anticipation of interest rate changes. So we've asked our financial analyst to take a look at that and see what the forecast would be. One other thing on the website, we will be canceling the RFP at our next meeting, and hopefully we will have a selection of a web company that will support our web environment. And lastly, we talked about in our budget workshop, one being the sewer rate and the other one was our water rate. We had a 65 cents per 100 cubic feet of water as a charge that comes back to the village on water rate. What we had proposed was to move that from 65 cents to 70 cents, which will help us with the project. There are a number of capital items that we're moving forward with in our transition from East Orange Water to New Jersey American. We have a number of items that we're going out to contract for with consultants, and this would help pay for some of that. And that's about it.
Are there any questions for Trustee Levison? So what I'm going to do is after I'm meeting with Trustee Levison on Tuesday as the chair of the Finance Committee. Wow, that's tomorrow. To go over some budget. And then I'm meeting with Mr. Lewis on Thursday so we can finalize a draft. And then I think instead of coming to a live meeting with a budget, we have a budget workshop where we go through with the trustees any changes, any additions, et cetera. And we also talk about the capital budget and the need to bond and where we kind of net out with the interest rates and what the projections are. Everybody okay with that? Great. Next on to Trustee Schnall.
I'm happy to say that with the nice warming weather that we've been having over spring as we're heading to summer, that there's a lot of activities going on in the village. The first I want to talk about happened yesterday, very recently. The South Orange Maplewood Artist Studio Tour was a big success. I think it was one of the largest and in terms of number of actual venues, locations where artists got to participate. And it was, I think, deemed a success on two levels, one by the artists in terms of how the experience they had, as well as the community in terms of their ability to visit and see art throughout. And there was also a very nice reception that Village President Collum and I had a chance to stop in, and I want to thank Sandy Martini for coordinating and putting this together. I think it was a really nice event. Also, in terms of nice weather, the swimming pool is open and ready, and what we've found, typically the attendance varies very much by weather. So in the last few years, we have accelerated the opening to be in Memorial Day on the weekends only, and then when we get to the Father's Day weekend, that's when we open it for 7 days a week. And in terms of passes that people registering and passes, as I said, it varies very much in the usage by the weather. So see how that goes.
I have a question.
Yes.
The vendor, you mentioned, could you just share again who the vendor is, the food vendor at the pool?
Yep. So Mike, who I forgot Mike's last name, I should know that, but he was the same vendor who we had a few years ago. Then there was a change for a couple of years, and we brought back Mike. He's terrific, and I think has really done a nice job with a very small space at the pool. He really turns out some nice stuff that folks get to enjoy. And we've used him for a number of things actually in the community, and he always comes in really well. In terms of the Baird offerings and recreation, the spring programs are running very well. We're also gearing up and getting ready for summer camp, the camp and registrations, which this year are at very high levels. It's difficult to predict usage and stuff, and hard to analyze whether it's driven by economy or whatever, but this year we have quite a few people already have registered for camp. So if you do want your child to participate in summer camp, make sure you do register early, because at some point we actually do max out. I also this is a few weeks ago, but just want to point out a very nice event on Memorial Day. On Monday itself, there was a very nice ceremony that several of the folks here on the dais had an opportunity to attend. I want to single out the Boy Scouts. That's something that has been revitalized for a few years. It had dropped down to there was only one Boy Scout, and now there were quite a few there who were participating in this very important day of event of recognizing our veterans, recognizing them, as well as the reading of the names of folks who have served, who were South Orange residents who had served in our various wars, and unfortunately they paid the ultimate price and did not return. So that was, I thought, a nice event. And lastly, on the Recreation and Cultural Affairs Committee, the SoFit Health and Wellness update is entering its last month. So this is it, the third Thursday of this month, which will be June 18th, is the final weigh-in. I know the folks here on the dais had a good month. Several of folks here have, don't the pops up lip. No, we've done well. We've actually had a couple month champions. The fellow next to me actually came in first place this month for the largest amount of weight loss. So you're a true loser, Mark. But actually, no. So it's really good, and we're going to have the event has run since from January to June, and I'm really looking forward, hopefully next month, to be able to report the total amount of weight loss by all the participants. We had 130 participants, and it'll be really nice to see how much collectively, how much weight this community has taken off, and more importantly than. The weight is just the metric, but it's really getting people into shape. And each month when people come in down to the Baird, they are either happy or not so happy with their weight loss, but most of them are paying attention, and that's really what this is about. It's the paying attention to their wellness, and Trustee Davis Ford is also working on a parallel program about eating healthy and nutrition. So I think it's a good sign that our community is watching our health. Moving on to the South Orange Village Center Alliance. Those of you who've been downtown have probably noticed, although it's not the most exciting thing, we actually have new garbage cans as well as new recycling bins. The old ones had been around for years and weren't very effective, quite frankly. The recycling had a picture of newspaper and bottles and aluminum, and it all kind of went into the same thing. It didn't really, but we're changing that out. So the key there is that the downtown looks really good. And in the past, you may have recalled on a Saturday morning, a Sunday morning, there was trash, and these days, I think it looks a lot better. It's looking pretty good.
I want to point out that we're also going to salvage as many of the old ones as we can and repurpose them elsewhere.
Repurpose them elsewhere, that's right. Believe it or not, the Play Day weekend, the planning for that has begun already. That's a sign, interesting, that's already more than 4, almost 5 months away, but it was such a large effort and very successful last year.
One of my favorite events.
It was fabulous, right? That whole weekend of Stay and Play weekend, including All-Comers Day, the historic baseball game. So actually the beginnings, those of you who are interested in volunteering, we had a great strong workforce out last year. We're going to look to do that again. Also, the Village Alliance had a really successful meeting at Rickleton's in an effort to work with our commercial brokers. So one of the number one items we hear as a board about what we would like to see change in our village, everybody loves lots of stuff, but most of us would like to see some potentially new stores in the downtown. And the best way to have that happen is through our commercial brokers. So the Village Alliance, one of the important things that we do is actually build relationships with commercial brokers. So as they introduce new potential tenants, we talk with them, help them to come into town. And as you know, recently Mara's Bakery in the Gateway Building opened, and they had a huge first weekend. Actually, my understanding is they ran out of gelato very quickly. You couldn't get anything. So it's good to see businesses prosper in their downtown, and we want to encourage that as well. Moving on to SOPAC, their annual festival, their annual gala was very recently. It was a week and a half ago, and it was a big success in terms of both the performance. Brian Stokes Mitchell, who is perhaps one of the top Broadway leading men out there, gave a tremendous performance on this stage. I think everybody that attended really enjoyed it. It was a wonderful event, silent auction, and just a lot of fun for those who participated. And most importantly, actually we overachieved our expectation in terms of the money that we're looking to raise. So that was very good as well. And lastly, but certainly not the least, we are 2.5 weeks away from the South by South Orange 3-day festival. So go to the website, www.southbysouthOrange.org, or if you want to shorten that to soxso.org. Your wristbands are available for purchase. It's for a 3-day pass. It's $25. And it will gain you access to incredible talent. The program actually kicks off Friday night here in SOPAC with something that we're calling the Teching Ball, which is sort of the coming together of technology and music in a very unique environment. And I think this promises to be perhaps one of the most interesting things that you will ever see. I think it's going to be very exciting. Saturday night on this stage, it is a premium event. It's another $15 on top. It's the only addition to the program. And Mike Griot, who performed up in the loft yesterday with an incredible program, is putting together and musically directing something that I think you will not want to miss. And we even have some folks out there in the audience who are going to be participating. I see Richard Bell, who has put together an incredible panel and is going to be talking about storytelling and myth in the digital age and really exciting stuff. So if anybody has any questions, and we're also looking for volunteers that weekend as well. We've already put together a great team of folks who've helped out with the marketing and the operations and design, and we will need more volunteers to help. And lastly, we are also expecting by the next couple of days to be able to announce some promotions that various restaurants and store owners will be able to offer just to those folks who have purchased their wristband sale. So your ticket for the weekend will actually be a little commemorative wristband, and in addition to gaining you access to all the programs, it will also give you some specials in our downtown. So
Don't forget the collectability of all the associated promotional items and tchotchkes, which will be, one-time names and therefore much more collectible. So
Much more.
Get them while you can.
Indeed. Oh, and last, this is the inaugural South by South Orange Fest. It is also the last. So I'm here to let you folks know. The good news, bad news is the name was nice and unique, but we have been asked to no longer use it. We are allowed to use it through the end of this program, and then we'll be selecting a new name going forward. It will be a very similar event. It will be larger as we go forward, as we learn from this, but we'll be coming up with a new name that we'll be able to announce most likely at our next board meeting.
Are there any questions for Trustee Schnall? Okay, great. Let's move into our second public comment. Just a reminder, if everyone can limit their comments to 3 minutes. We have the timer on the projector, and if you can state your name and your address when you come up to the microphone.
Testing. It works. I'm Richard Bell, 321 Walton Avenue. Thank you, Steve. Very excited about South by South Orange. It's going to be amazing. So buy your wristbands. The reason that I'm coming up here to talk, though, is because the RFPs that Sheena was talking about. I just wanted to say I'm actually here to represent the Farrell Field Park Conservancy. As you know, 3 months ago, we gave a presentation, and thank you for bringing the stakeholders together. We are looking forward to meeting with everyone involved and finding a solution and finding a use for the building that is good for the community and makes everyone happy. The one thing that I wanted to address, though, is because it was a little change that I noticed from all of the discussions that we've had up to this point was, when we made our presentation, I have 1 minute and 51 seconds left, great. When we made our presentation 3 months ago, we offered then to work with stakeholders to find a solution to the animal control issue in town. And we're still adamant about doing that. But the key word there is in town. And I don't think anyone, at least up to that point and since, has mentioned to us about going out and getting statistics from other communities about their needs that we can solve. And I'm not sure if that is something that's new. But I know I can say from this stakeholder and from the Farrell Field Park Conservancy and those who are interested in the River Greenway and the park that providing animal services for other communities is probably not something that we would favor. I could say that right off the bat, because of the past experience that we've had providing animal services. And I'm not sure. To us, we want what's best for our community, not what's best for all the surrounding communities, but what's best for our community. So we're going to do our best to work with everyone to find a solution to that problem. So that's all I have to say. Thanks. 13 seconds left.
That was good. That was good. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to be heard at this time? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. We will close the public comment portion and move on to discussion items. I added 2 discussion items. One that we are continuously being asked about from a lot of residents and a lot of stakeholders is a Village Hall update. As a little backstory, as you may recall, the village put out an RFP to consider adaptive reuse options on our historic village hall. The premise of the RFP was that you have to maintain the exterior, all the historic elements, but we would consider selling the building for different uses. The Board of Trustees went through this exercise a few years ago, perhaps in 2009 or 2010, roughly at that time, had not received any interest. We decided to reissue the RFP, seeing as though the market has recovered. We're getting a lot of interest in our central business district. So we worked with a consulting firm that has previously worked with our South Orange Village Center Alliance in testing the market and seeing if anything was out there that we would consider. We did receive responses. We eliminated, I believe, 2 right away that just would not be good for the community, didn't meet any of the needs we were trying to fill, and would be silly for us. The 2 viable options that the board was considering was, one, as Mr. Lewis previously reported, one was a boutique hotel, which, as you may recall, was identified in the Atlantic Report roughly 15 or 20 years ago as a desirable use in our central business district. And the other proposal was a restaurant that was looking at doing restaurant space on the first floor, outdoor dining, and also meeting space on the second floor. Again, both proposers had understood that they would have to meet all the requirements for the historic preservation as a part of their proposed uses. At this point in time, there are still ongoing discussions that are happening between the Board of Trustees and the bidders, so we are not able to disclose at this moment in time what those bids were. The board had designated myself formerly as a trustee, Trustee Levison, as the chair of the Finance Committee, and Village President Alex Torpy to meet with these 2 groups to flush out some of the details, ask questions, and just kind of move through that process. I wish we could have included the public a little bit sooner, but because we have multiple bids and we want to ultimately, if we move in the direction of sale, we want to make sure that number is in the best interest of the community. So right now it's difficult to share those numbers or project to one or the other what those numbers were, which is why we're not doing it right now. So at this point in time, I just wanted to give the update, allow the administrator if he has anything to add, and we are approaching deadlines too with how long that the bids for the renovation are good. So we're under crunch time right now, and so I just want the board to have consensus on the direction, how we want to close out with some of the remaining questions. We received some from our Finance Committee, which were sent to one of the bidders to clarify some of the things that weren't necessarily clear from the proposal, and we are setting up a meeting for this Friday to close out those remaining items. And then from that point, I do think that we do have to engage the public and let them see what these options were, what the cost projections were. We also received a very detailed spreadsheet from our village administrator that looked at the renovation costs compared against reuse, adaptive reuse, the sale of the building, and also what it would cost us to build a new building. So we were projecting out a lot of different scenarios for the future of municipal offices in the village. Mr. Lewis, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that, basically sums it up unless anybody has questions.
Well, I think the comparison was if we did sell and what the alternative to us moving to another location, which included build or lease.
Going back to your point about the timing, we have to make that decision for the following meeting, the 22nd, because I think the construction bid expires on the 26th or 27th, so we have to make the decision by the 22nd, and that's something, is that correct?
Yeah, well, I think the extension was through the end of June.
Yes, my point is that if we want to have a public meeting, those president, I don't think we're going to have enough time to discuss it in the 22nd in full detail unless there's nothing else on the agenda. So the question is there an opportunity for doing a special meeting next week or not?
The one thing that we did commit to, and I did as well, is that because I think this discussion is a lot bigger than any one of us. There's a lot of arguments to be made for the land use component, the connector of a facility from East South Orange Avenue to west, you have people from SOFCA, the Development Committee, all those folks who can speak to that. You have our historic preservation advocates who can speak to the importance of maintaining that as a municipal structure. And then obviously we have the financial models and projections for the people who care solely about the numbers. If we take, I think it is significant enough because it's not the building in and of itself. It then has much bigger implications of the future of municipal offices, other capital budget items. What do we want to do with those buildings? Can we start looking at merging some other municipal facilities? And also we have some real numbers on what these costs are going to be for police headquarters, for library services. So there's kind of the conversation of Village Hall as it relates to the larger issues and direction for the village. I understand this is a really, really tight timeline. I do think we call a special meeting and invite the public to attend where we basically close out all the details of what we have remaining with the one bidder where there was outstanding questions. We make it a public forum. We allow the public to come forward and we share what these proposers proposed and what the actual bids were, et cetera. Would everybody be on board with having that meeting and then making the decision by the June 22nd meeting?
I think the timeline makes sense because, as Trustee Rajner said, we have a deadline that we have to meet on the other bids, I think, for the renovation of Village Hall.
Well, it's by the end of June, and I mean, I wouldn't suggest it, but we can always get extensions. I'm not saying we do that, but we can always go back to the people who actually put in the renovation bids and ask them for an additional 15 days if need be. Again, it's a big contract. It's a $5.5 million, contract. I don't think they're going to say over 15 days we're now, not agreeing to a slight extension. But I do think that the sooner we can move this along, the better, because we do have to make a decision. I don't think it's anybody's fault. It's just a lot.
I won't disagree that we probably could get a 15 or at least whatever the extension is the first Monday in July. But we need to know that before we have this meeting.
Yeah.
So we can't hold off on it. Otherwise, right now we have to go with the assumption that June 22nd is our
Sure.
drop dead date on making this decision. And so that, since we're used to Monday nights, if it's possible, I think we should try and shoot for Monday night.
Before the
'Cause it doesn't
special,
interfere.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't interfere with any committee meetings then that we know about.
Can we have, the one thing that I would like to do, and we were talking to one of the bidders about coming in on Friday, I would like the trustees to actually, Howard and I have met the groups so far. I would like the other trustees to be able to sit down with the groups, and because of OPMA regulations, only 2 can be in the meeting at once. But I think that Howard and myself have kind of gotten what we need, but I'd like the others to be able to meet with these folks and ask any questions before we go into a public meeting. Would you like to do that? Would you like to?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we really need to be fully informed
Yeah.
so we can make the best subjective decision possible.
So why don't we, we'll work with the administration on this, but let's try and coordinate the remaining trustees to be able to sit down with the 2 options. We've agreed, and we'll work out the details through doing a doodle poll, that we want to have a special meeting, invite the public, where we're going to share the details and collect feedback. And then we're going to move forward at this point in time with the June 22nd target date. And if for whatever reason between now and then, if we need to ask for a 15-day extension for any remaining items, we can do so. But for the time being, the target date is going to be June 22nd. Can we use next Monday, the 15th, as the special meeting for Village Hall? Would that work for everyone?
I believe so. Let me just check something.
And obviously, our staff, we would need you there. But I just like to schedule things in real time. Why not?
Even following up on that, you may want to call the meeting for 8 o'clock and I'll call our closed session for 7:30 in case we have to go over any details first.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good for me.
Before we confirm anything, let me just confirm tomorrow morning with SOPAC to make sure there's availability.
Okay. So tentatively, we're going to look for Monday, June 15th, and if not here, we can find additional space somewhere else. So let's just plan on having it on the 15th. And then this week, we will nail down a schedule with the 2 proposers and set up meetings so that the rest of the trustees who have not met these folks will be able to ask their questions independent of the public forum. Sound good? Great. And next is the extending the hours of operation for the Central Business District. I added this as a discussion item, but I'm going to refer it to Trustee Rosner because it was worked through your committee first.
This was something that we discussed in the past. It was more about, request came from Rite Aid to extend the hours. It's not the first time we've had this request, but the most recent. They actually want 24/7, or at least staying open till 2 a.m. The Planning and Zoning Committee discussed it, and also I think Trustee Schnall discussed it with the Village Alliance, that allowing retail businesses to stay open to 1 a.m. versus the current 11 p.m. Obviously, the more they stay open, the better. We're not talking about service businesses. Restaurants can already stay open that late. This would just be for retail businesses. There's only a few places that would probably take advantage of it, but we understand the needs of certain residents and who want an option to go out later or pick up something later than 11 o'clock. And we don't want to go down the path of 24/7. And 1 a.m. was discussed because we don't allow on-street parking between 2 and 6, so it just sort of jived with it. And we thought it would be a good test to do it. We thought that, the recommendation from the committee was to go ahead and allow it at 1 a.m. for retail businesses. Only question is whether we should put a sunset clause in there, whether it automatically, try it for a year, and if the ordinance would, if it didn't work out after a year, we just automatically revert back to 11, or we could pass an ordinance again.
I like that.
So just to add a little bit on top of that is that we're looking at, in terms of the pilot, the idea of like a 6-month, not a payment in lieu of taxes, please, just a pilot program, is that we want to check it out for 6 months, I think was the start and end, and then decide. And we wanted to limit it because when we started thinking, what about that business, that business, that business, soon you start getting closer to residential areas. So we wanted to limit it to the Central Business District, the B1 zone. The entire kind of process of how this came to planning and zoning, SOFCA, and we also ran it by public safety. So we did run it by the police chief to see what his recommendation, he was okay with extending to 1 o'clock. Was because Rite Aid had brought to the attention of SOFCA, we have a lot of customers and folks who want to be able to come into Rite Aid, a little bit later than 11 to grab whatever it is that they need, but obviously we didn't want to spot code for one business and say, can you stay open until 1 or 2?
So explain for those who don't know what B1 is. What streets does it involve downtown?
It's a business 1 zone. Mr. Lewis, do you have the map, and can you go over what a B1 zone is?
Yeah, I don't have the map directly, but I know the sort of the core area is on South Orange Avenue. Basically, I think it technically goes to Investors, which is actually, there's Rite Aid and the funeral home, and then Investors, if I'm not mistaken, to down through almost to Church Street, just on the avenue, and then extends down Valley, maybe to 3rd Street. And
Close to 3rd?
What's that?
Close to, excuse me, Taylor Place to
3rd? And it may go up, up Bose, the one block to Taylor.
It's basically the downtown core, the operation.
I know what it is, but B1 to people listening and stuff, they would not know what that means.
A little bit more expansive than what the Special Improvement District and SOFCA oversees. So we figure for a first stab at this, we want to be flexible, try it out. If it doesn't work, we can always strike the ordinance and go back to status quo. But let's try it out. We have a recommendation from our downtown business district. Through planning and zoning, through the police department, it seems like everybody's on the same page. So unless there's any objection.
Is that 6-month recommendation period, does it consider weather? I mean, would some of the business that they expect to get from this be weather dependent or season dependent? For instance, Seton Hall is not in session for most of the summer. So you might want to pick your 6 months carefully, is what I'm saying.
Well, if we were to have a first and second reading in July, we'd get August, which is a part of summer, and then we'd get fall, and we'd get the winter months. So that's probably a good.
The middle of August.
Yeah, they get back middle August.
Nobody's in a big hurry to race out in the middle of January, that 1 in the morning, though. Just we want to pick that carefully, is what I'm saying.
July.
I think we'll get a good enough flavor from 6 months.
Okay.
So it would start if we introduced it at the next meeting and start at the end of July, and then we'd have through, who's good with 6 months? Through January?
Yeah, through end of January.
End of January. Okay. Are there any Objections from the board? Should we prepare the ordinance?
Fine with me.
If SOCA is comfortable in suggesting it and the police are fine with it, I don't see a reason to argue against it.
Okay, great. Mr. Lewis, can we have an ordinance prepared for the next meeting? Are there any other discussion items? Any new business?
I move to adjourn.
Well, let me just get clarification on this. Are we adjourning the meeting? How do we go back into,
Executive session?
Yeah, you're not formally adjourning this because you have to then come back into open again and adjourn.
what is the motion then? A motion to recess or go back into exec? Okay.
Based on the same resolution.
Can I,
Are we recessing until next Monday also? Are we calling a whole new meeting?
Or you're going to have it.
That's a
call
whole
a
new
new
meeting.
meeting? Okay, just for the benefit of the public again, earlier in the meeting, I had announced 6 items that we were discussing in closed session. We reserved our right to come back into open session and go back into executive session again. These are discussion items that we cannot have in a public forum, and so what the board will be doing is going back into executive session. When we come out, we close the meeting, so there's no other business that happens here after we come here.
And there's nothing, no action.
No action will be
And
taken.
there's no action to be taken. All right, can I have a motion, please? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? I love that thing. I'd like to reconvene the Board of Trustees meeting June 8th. It is 10:35 p.m. Can we have a roll call? Here.
Trustee Clark.
Here.
Trustee Davis Ford.
I'm here.
Trustee Levinson.
Present.
Trustee Rosner.
Here.
Trustee Schnall.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Still here.
Mr. Lerner.
Here.
Mr. Rother. Susan Caljean, present.
I'll now entertain a motion.
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn that was. Thank you. Good night.